Welcome to the International Schools Podcast, where we discuss all aspects of technology and life in international schools, with new episodes live every 2 weeks. This podcast is sponsored by Apps Events. We're a Google for Education partner and active since the launch of Google Apps for Education in 2006. We're a team of former educators and all experts in helping schools integrate Google into their schools and their classrooms. All training is customized for each school, and we make sure it has a lasting impact. Literally thousands of educators worldwide have earned their Google Educator Certification with us with our certification bootcamps, and these take place every month and get your staff certified quickly. We also host Google Summits, which are fun 2-day conference-style events with concurrent sessions and keynotes delivered by experienced Google trainers, teaching on a broad range of topics using G Suite both in the classroom and in the school. Check it out over at appsevents.com, and we can bring any of these events to your school, which is an amazing way to build a Google community amongst your staff to support each other, plus to increase the profile of yourself and your school. The podcast is also brought to you by Acer for Education. People ask us what Chromebooks we recommend for schools, and after trying them all quite literally, we always recommend Acer. We've been to Acer headquarters in Taiwan to be part of product discussions, and they're genuinely the best thought out, most cost effective, and most importantly durable devices out there. They're always innovating, including the first tablet running Chrome and the first convertible touchscreen Chromebook. The latest version of this is a Spin 11, which has a stylus and 2 cameras, and we highly recommend it for schools. They of course have a full range of Windows laptops, and for esports fans, their Predator range is second to none. If you'd like more information, please just leave your email over at gg.gg/Acer Education. That's gg.gg/Acer Education, and we'll get right back to you. And now, on to the interview. Hello and welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be talking with my sometime co-hosts, John Mikton at the International School of Luxembourg, and Ben Rouse, who runs the UK and Google relationship with Apps Events. So hi, guys.
Hey, good morning.
Hi there.
Good, guys. Well, we've been on the mic for a while, so we thought we'd better click on record. And what we're going to have a quick chat about today is becoming a Google trainer, or the official term now is Google for Education Certified Trainer. Now, we're all certified trainers, and we've all been doing it for a while. So what I want to talk about a little bit is, what is the current status of a trainer program? How do you become a trainer? What's involved? And then a little bit about our experiences and the things we've done because of it. Because, honestly, the only reason I even know John and Ben is from becoming a trainer and getting involved in this. So let's kick it off, guys. Ben, do you want to say a little bit about the current trainer program?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, we'll probably get into this in a bit, but I became a trainer by sitting in your session in Frankfurt, Dan, as you were going through there. Yeah, that was where I got my application done a few years back. But the current trainer program has kind of developed a little bit from then. So if you have gone through the Google Educator Level 1 and Level 2 certifications, you're then in a position where you can... Ideally, you did that because you are helping people out at school with their use of G Suite. You've got some Chromebooks in the school. Yeah, so educators that have decided to go down the route of getting Level 1 and Level 2 certification, so the Google Educator certifications, basically, I would imagine that they start by thinking about their use in their classroom. People start asking for a few tips and tricks. So once you've got Level 1 and 2, you can apply to become a certified trainer. And it's aimed at people who are starting to support other teachers in their school or their district or their municipality. That shouldn't be so hard to say. And they're looking to kind of certify that as, I'm doing some training and actually now I am a certified trainer. So the application process means you have to show that you've got Level 1 and 2, and then you submit a 3-minute video, like a 1-minute this is me and a 2-minute demo of a tool. Doesn't have to be a complicated demo, like an introduction to Google Forms would suffice. Yeah. And then you have to put in examples of the training that you've done. So you'll kind of list at least 5 trainings, and you use one as a case study. So that's around I did some training on Google Classroom with my school, and this is how it went, and here's the feedback. And you submit the feedback just so they can see that. But the key thing with that case study is actually, are you a reflective trainer, right? So did you identify the bits that weren't ideal and that you recognize when it's not going right and that you can adapt for next time and improve? And that's really the idea. And then once you become a Google certified trainer, you get access to a big community of trainers who chat a lot and share resources. You have to recertify each year. And so that means taking a little quiz on updates that have happened to G Suite and Chromebooks over the previous 12 months.
I just got my email today saying I was recertified for next year. And,
yeah, I just got my email that I have to be recertified, so I'm at a different stage.
Yeah, well, John,
I'm in the middle.
Very simply, yeah. I mean, we can go over this now. It's two things. It's like Ben said. There's an exam, which is a very simple exam, and you can retake it if you don't pass. And it's just a Google form, and then there's like just 12. 12. You need to do 12 training engagements, which is interesting. And basically, it's interesting because people. Obviously, you can train as a side, kind of business, and you can charge for it, or you can be doing it for free. I mean, that's kind of I guess some confusion about the program. Is it for professional trainers, or is it for people that just want to help out their school and others? And I guess it's for everybody.
Yeah, because all the training that I'm doing is within my school, and that's that's what I register every time. Every week, I do a little how-to video on a Google aspect, and then train people in school. So that's what I've been using, and I think in the past that's always qualified. I don't know if things have changed.
No, that's still fine, I think.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Well done for registering them, because I'm in between you two in that I have passed the little skills assessment thing, but I may be a little bit behind on logging my 12 training engagements. Now, as a Google for Education training partner, I definitely have 12. I just need to log them.
So good question. The 12 is hours or events?
Separate training engagements. So it might be like you said, like you've done a little video and put that out to staff, or it might be like in my case that we've done a 120 people event somewhere and anything in between. So
yeah.
But for example, like if I do a G Suite admin course and it's two parts, part 1 and part 2, I'll register that as 2 different training sessions. So it might be 1 hour. Yeah. The first hour of the summit is part 1. The second hour of the summit is part 2, and it's 2 distinct classes that different people can come to. So I'll put it down as 2.
It's interesting how it's really matured, because Dan, if you remember, I did it, I think almost 10 years ago, maybe.
Well, is that possible? I was just checking this. So I certified in November 2010. I'm just checking the email. It was a lady called Dana Nguyen, if you ever remember Dana.
Yeah, I do.
She used to pretty much run the Google for Education program by herself in the old days, and she developed the original program.
I think after you got trained, you came to Prague to our school, and you helped us train my team.
Yeah, exactly. We did, if I remember rightly, I did like a 3 workshops. Like we did like one at the beginning to get everyone started. I remember there was yourself, there was Patrick, who's now an innovator. There was a few other guys, and then we did a couple more. So I think that was how you got certified, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly, I got certified, and then for a long time there was not as much traction, and then suddenly I think, and you'll know better than me, I think suddenly the ante went up, and they realized that they needed a far more robust structure to make this sustainable. And then I had to recertify every 18 months, and now it's every year.
Yeah, exactly. In the old days, you didn't need to recertify, or at least I don't think you did. It was much more kind of ad hoc and informal. Now it's taken much more seriously by Google for sure.
And it's good. I think it's great. I mean, for me, it's been really good, because I remember the first few years, it was like, okay, I've got this, but there was not much of a community, and I wasn't being checked in. Like, do you still know the latest? And I think this process has been really good for me, because it's challenging me to make sure that, and part of my day-to-day workflows, that I'm really looking, where are these opportunities to support teachers with Google Drive and the Education Suite. I think that I like that provocation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, guys, that's a good way to segue into like, how has it sort of changed like your career, I guess, becoming a trainer and that the kind of direction it's taken you down?
Well, I don't think the Google trainer I think it depends what your professional situation is. I've always been involved in, IT directors and school administration. So it's always been for me an added asset. And also it's an added provocation where I'm being challenged to always keep my skill set and really be in tune with what Google Education Suite is doing, the new products, the new processes, the kind of the new tools. And that for me has been extremely helpful as I'm working in schools that are adopting Google and supporting teachers and getting them to understand the power of these tools to support learning. So for me, it's been kind of like this, little fire under my foot that's kept me just, make sure that I'm keeping on top of it. And that I've found really helpful for my own personal professional learning. I think also when I'm actually hiring a digital learning coach now, that's one of the things I look at is, are they Google certified? What is kind of their Google narrative and certification? That's really important because the more they have of that when they come in, the better they're prepared to support us.
Yeah. You also, John, are you as a school leader, do you think it's also important that you kind of put your money where your mouth is by you're going to be asking your tech coaches to understand the tools and to understand Google? So is there a bit of also kind of leading by example? I've got the certification, I'm going through these processes, and
yes,
I'm not just asking you to do it.
Yeah, I think it depends also on your leadership philosophy, but that's something that I find very hard, but I make it's almost like my religion is that I walk the talk.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy, but I spend, I must walk 15,000 steps a day on my campus because I believe in the power of face-to-face. And, wherever I can do, if somebody's going to have to experience that, if I'm leading them and coaching them, I need to do it too, because I'll be better equipped to support them. So yes, not always easy to do, but that's something that I always aspire and really try to work towards. And that's something that I'm constantly challenging myself and making sure that I'm keeping with that philosophy of walking the talk. Absolutely, Ben. I think it's so important, especially when you're in a leadership role.
I think a lot of implementations of technology, whether it's Google or otherwise, I've seen somewhere the leadership team want it to be implemented, but you realize they're not really doing it themselves. So I think that's an important aspect of it as well.
I think that's the biggest challenge that schools have is then they adopt this, but the leadership team themselves use Google. In other words, they understand the folders, but they're not looking at it as a system and kind of more at a macro level, kind of helicopter view. How is this system going to impact learning and our workflows and our organizational capacity? And I think partly it's because it's so easy just to pick up and kind of work out on your own. But I think to really leverage this tool, it requires more strategic thinking and sitting down and with a trainer and really thinking, how do we communicate? How are we sharing documents, the permissions and all that? I think, teams that are willing to engage with that and take the time in leadership roles, I think really then can leverage a tool much more. But I think it's a real challenge for leadership teams to, and all the busyness of everything that they have to do to actually, set aside time for that on top of the million other things. So, but I do feel that, and Dan, you and I have done some trainings with admin teams, and at conferences we had that leadership strand. I think that really resonates with leaders, but I think it's just the time, where do they fit it in? But I think if they can, the payoff is very big.
I think that, so the talking about the trainer program, one of the things we've noticed recently, so I took my school down the Google route, and it was around about the same time that I did the Innovator Academy or the Teacher Academy at the time in 2013, which was where someone from that academy said, "Hey, we're doing a summit at my school in Frankfurt. Do you want to come?" It was Evan's share to call out Evan on that one, and I was like, well, "Yeah, of course I do." So I got myself along to that, presented one session, and it turned out that was an apps event, which is where I first met you, Dan. And then I actually just decided to jump in on your how to become a certified trainer session, which is where I became a certified trainer. So I kind of took all that back to my school and we started implementing G Suite. And yeah, that was the beginning of my journey. What I've noticed more recently now that I've transitioned through training across my school, my group of schools, and then actually making that move out to be a full-time trainer, which actually, if we get time to talk about as well, that's an interesting transition when you're doing training and you're no longer able to talk about at my school. I think that's an interesting point in that trainer journey. But just before that, I think on the trainer community, I think there are a lot of trainers now, and I think there's that point where they're kind of saying, okay, we've got this community, we can chat, but actually there's loads of people out there kind of training people and raising the awareness of what G Suite and Chromebooks can do. And I think they want a little bit more back. So actually recently we ran a trainer energizer, so an in-person event for existing trainers. We supported Google with that in the UK, and they are starting to roll those out globally. So I think that's the next iteration is kind of going back to that group of trainers around the world and supporting them in being those change makers. What does good training look like? Getting tips from in-person events with other people, not just relying on the group. So that seems to be one of the places it's moving to.
I think that's an interesting model. I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator, and that's something that they do is they get people in the regions together 2-3 days. And I find it's really invigorating to have the face-to-face. And, you know, in my role being full-time in a school and then, you know, doing the training periodically on the side or within my school, I definitely feel sometimes I'm not as able to connect. And I think something like that, you know, if the trainers in the Benelux all got together, I think the face-to-face can be really a great way to get excited again and kind of get some PD on, you know, what does it mean to be a good trainer?
Yeah, because there's always someone in a different context doing something you've never thought of. You just start chatting and you're like, well, that is genius. I've never thought of that. But that's absolutely wonderful. And so, you know, it doesn't always work in every context. That's the beauty of schools. They're all different. But yeah, that networking piece is, I think, something that has room for development.
It's interesting, Ben, the point you made about people who leave a full-time job at school and they're not saying in the context of this is what we work in my school. You know, I've seen a lot of people go through that transition. I mean, obviously, there was Dean, who worked with Apps Events and now works for Google. Ollie, who went independent and now works for Google as well. And quite a few others. And I think the perspective is different. The perspective it changes from, you know, this is what we do in my school to like, this is what I see a lot of schools. Because when you're doing this full time, you know, you're seeing a lot of different perspectives. So you tend to have like a much broader perspective of a lot of schools, you know, just not one you're working at. I think that's kind of a difference people bring to it.
Interesting, because I know when I present at other places and work with other schools, they're often wanting concrete evidence or concrete structures or concrete anecdotes to say, oh, you did it in this context. So now I feel like I'm confident we can do it in our context. And I know some friends of mine that are consultants have found that sometimes challenging because they're not in the classroom. You know, I teach a grade 6, so I actually know the struggle of getting a group of 6th graders to share folders properly. So I think your perspective, Dan, which says that you have that much broader context, you have many more different perspectives, I think is very important. But I think sometimes also you don't have that granularity of experience to tap into.
Yeah, we definitely find, like, I think you just need to be cognizant of what you are and what you aren't. So I can't go in professor, like when I'm working with primary teachers, elementary school teachers, I just need to be honest and upfront about my background is secondary maths, right? I've worked with primary teachers. These are the examples that I've worked on. These are the things that they've said have worked really well, but never to come across that I know more than I do. And I think that's where we, in the UK, where we do bespoke training for schools, having a good network of trainers that we use that have a range of skill sets and wherever possible, trying to kind of align, primary trainers as opposed to secondary trainers, or people who have leadership experience, people who have inclusion, sort of special educational needs experience, and trying to align those with the needs of the people. And I think that's the more nuanced part of training, is kind of figuring out what people need, being adaptable to that. And that's a challenge bit. And actually, we were just talking before about, and it may be an example of a training that we'd heard about where the trainer kind of just stuck to their plan and wasn't adaptable. And I think that's a big challenge for the trainer community.
Yeah, and I think that flexibility and the nuances that you brought up, and is being able to read the crowd and have enough in your pocket to suddenly shift everything so you engage them and you're not being kind of pigheaded and saying, no, we're going to do it my way. I think that really requires a lot of flexibility, and also having a toolkit where you can pull things out for that sudden change. I think people really appreciate it when you're responsive and they have some authentic input and then you react as you're doing the workshop. I think that always is very helpful.
Yeah, we did an event at South by Southwest in Austin, and then we also did the same thing at ISTE in Philadelphia in 2019. And we used a couple of really amazing teachers, Katie Fielding, Susanna Summers, and Erica Took. So they're based in the US, and actually Ollie and I were on that event and kind of did our thing. But it was really useful to also be able to refer to. So Katie is Tech Coach of the Year in Virginia,
Wow.
And she works day to day with teachers. So actually, she does a lot of coaching, more one-to-one, one to sort of small group coaching. And I think that's the other bit is there's a range of ways. So in the Energizer event as well, we kind of went through those different training modes. So, you might be doing a session for 100 people. You might be doing one-to-one coaching with one teacher. And there's such a range to work in. And that's why, the main thing is, right, going back to the networking, so great to be able to speak to people doing things that's slightly different to you and kind of understanding all the possible ways of doing it. So yeah, privileged to work with them, and also enabled us at that event to be able to have, if maybe I was talking to someone and I couldn't relate to their situation, but I can say, hey, do you want to speak to Erica? Do you want to speak to Katie? Because they're in a US school doing what you're doing. And actually that helps, because I know what I was like when we had training events at my school. I was definitely sitting there cross-armed at the beginning going, so what gives you the right to come and talk to me then?
Okay, you've been the worst kind of student to have in your class. Okay?
I was awful.
But it's interesting because I agree with what you said about you've got to be honest, because for me, I don't have any classroom teaching experience, but, what I do know about is, I've set up Google in a lot of schools. I've managed, G Suite ongoing for schools. And so I like talking to leadership because I know I've done that, work, and I've worked on it, and I know the problems, and I'll talk to classroom teachers about how to become certified, or about something technical, or about something specific. But you can't pretend that you know something you don't. It comes across, it's pretty obvious.
And I think it's so important as you're building relationships with your audience or your participants in a workshop or clients that, the honesty is actually appreciated. And if you say, no, I don't know, but guess what? I have somebody that I can connect you with. Let me connect you with them, and let me make sure this happens, and I'll be CC'd on this. And then once I see it's going well, then I'll pop out. And I think that's it, is I think, Ben, you were saying this professional learning network that you build is so important, because it becomes also a resource for you to connect other people when you're saying, you know what, I don't really know much about learning support in a pre-K class, but guess what? I know somebody that does. Let me do the virtual introduction. And I think that is very powerful, that the leveraging the professional learning network and really being a facilitator of that, helping people connect and making sure that the connection becomes viable.
Feels kind of similar to in the service sector. If you want to get really good feedback from your customers, then actually doing a perfect job all of the time doesn't necessarily get you the highest scores on feedback. It's actually, if something goes a little bit wrong, but you deal with it really well, that's what gets you really high kind of feedback scores on reviews, etc. So I suppose it's similar to that just saying, I don't know, but here is a great way of making up for that. And I think people respond really well.
Definitely. Yeah. Guys, I know we're running a bit up to time. I just want us really quickly to finish it off. Ben, I know there's always a bit of confusion about should you become a trainer or an innovator? What's the difference? Is one better than the other? There's no clear answers about it, but how do you see it?
I think from our point of view, when we're working with people who are doing training with us, we like them to be a certified trainer. We put that as a requirement because ultimately you can independently work through level 1 level 2, and the trainer application, because the trainer application is always open, and there's like monthly cycles. So I think there isn't necessarily if you're using the tools and you're supporting people around you in your school, then there is no barrier to becoming a trainer, other than obviously a couple of fees for a couple of exams of like $10, $25, and time. So putting aside time, which is easier said than done. The Innovator program is obviously, it's more competitive in that there is a cohort of 36 people in one place for 3 days. So you apply for that and you may not make the 36. However, the big difference I think people would probably say is when you become a trainer, you quietly, on your phone or on your device, you get your email saying you're a trainer. And it's kind of that, it might be that you're all by yourself and you sort of have this little yay to yourself and then off you go. And it might be that you go back into school and say, hey, I'm a certified trainer. And in a number of cases, people are like, what's that then? And don't necessarily show enthusiasm. Whereas with the Innovator, you get to go away for 3 days with another 35 people who are equally as excited as you, and build those relationships. And actually the network that comes out of the Innovator Academy is pretty special. And I think that the trainer community doesn't have the mechanisms to kind of build that learning network quite as effectively as the Innovator does, just because you spend 3 intense days together, and that connection is quite significant. So those are probably the differences. But like I say, from our point of view, we know that trainer kind of shows that people have got the prerequisite knowledge and a bit of experience to start working with us as trainers, if that's what they want to do. And equally within your school, if you want to make sure your tech coaches, your teachers have a level of understanding of the tools that you're using in the classroom, then level 1, level 2, and ultimately getting some trainers is a really sustainable way of maintaining that understanding of the tools. The Innovator, I would say, is like a special add-on.
And just to come back to one of the things you said, it can be a bit random. I mean, Benham, someone Benham we work very closely with, who is an amazing trainer, one of the best Google trainers in the world, who was rejected, I think, 3 times for the Innovator Academy. It can be kind of random, sometimes there's just so many people apply that you just missed a cut and it's not your fault even.
And that's the thing, like the US ones are more competitive.
Yes.
After you, John.
Yeah. No, I was just going to echo what Dan was saying. I know quite a few people that have applied, and I'm like, really? You didn't get in? And I'm thinking, you're amazing. And so I think, it is very competitive. And when there's competition, there's so many variables sometimes that you don't control.
Yeah, like the US Innovator Academies are much more competitive than the ones outside of the US, just because of its awareness. And I think also in some instances, if you have Innovator or trainer in the US, then that is one thing that people will look for in terms of hiring a tech coach for a district. Whereas I know in the UK, I could put that on my CV, but no one would use that as a differentiator for whether I got a job or not.
And I think it's interesting. I think that is starting to change in international schools. I see more and more schools putting that, Innovator level 1 and Google certified, teacher level 1 and 2, or Google trainer. I think schools are realizing if they can get people that have a good solid base, it really helps when they're trying to promote that. So I think there's a bigger awareness in international schools.
I've also noticed, obviously, when you're working in schools that maybe have a range of tools available, that people are looking to get the full range as well, like their MIE and the ADE, especially if those are the tools that are available to the people in your school. That's it, that getting the full range seems a good way to go.
Definitely. Guys, I think that's a great place to end it. It's been, as always, an interesting chat. I just want to say to anyone listening, please send us an email or drop a comment wherever, if you're on Spotify or YouTube or anywhere, just drop us a comment. We love to hear. Let us know any feedback. What kind of interviews would you like to hear? Is there anything you'd like? Maybe there's something we've already talked about and you'd like us to go into it deeper. We're still learning as we go with the podcasting thing, and it's a lot of fun. But any feedback, we've had a few emails, and they're always gratefully received. So please, if you're thinking about anything, good or bad, we welcome criticism. Please drop us an email, and we'd love to have it. So Ben and John, thank you very much. And
Thanks,
I look
Dan.
forward to getting on an episode again soon.
Thank you very much.
Great to talk to you, Ben. See ya.
Cheers,
Yeah, you
guys.
too.